connectionslab.org. Whenever I'm going, boy, this is going to be a great recording, it's like, I didn't press the record button. We did that with Ken Martin, who's our state party chair, but who's also the chair of the Association of State Democratic Committees, which is all of the state chairs, vice chairs, and executive directors from around the country. And he's also a DNC vice chair. So we have him on, and halfway through, I realized I didn't hit record. And it was great. It was, it's just the way it is. It's like, that's how it works. So where were we before I got off on this?
So yeah, who would like to share some of the things that they talked about in their group, some of the wisdom that they got from their group?
I'm not sure where. Oh, there I am.
Katie Hobbs was just elected governor here. She was just
What?
in Arizona.
Wow.
Oh, yay!
Wait,
Oh,
what?
that is so great.
It just came across my screen. That's all I know. They just
What happened?
Katie Hobbs.
Right.
I want her to
Yay!
go down. I just because she was so like
That's
Trump-like, and just the way no.
Are you sure about that? That
Yeah,
could
NBC
also
News.
something
Democrat,
fishy
Katie
about
Hobbs
that
wins
election.
Arizona. Yeah.
Yeah, so the last tranche just came through from Maricopa, and it was very much for Lake, but nowhere's near enough, and that's the last big chunk coming in. So there's no way that she can catch up. I think Katie Hobbs should be ahead by like 20,000 votes
Yeah.
now. So
30,000 or more.
well, it was 30,000 before this.
Oh, yeah, before.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now it's about 21,000. Yeah.
But they still don't think that she can make up that difference then?
No.
No,
No.
Okay.
based on what's out there. Yeah.
I don't.
Oh, that was fabulous. Oh,
Oh,
That's some really good news we got.
Yeah.
We'll take it. We'll take every little piece we can get, right?
Woohoo.
yes, yes.
That's
Carrie
awesome.
Lake Carrie Lake was making fun of Nancy Pelosi's husband being beaten up, and I thought that was
Yeah.
pretty
Oh my
pretty
God.
tacky.
He's just a trashy person.
Yeah, that's really bad. I mean, come on. He's it's just ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. You're right, Ginny. I see Sue has her hand up.
Okay, I put it down. One of the things we talked about, Liz Keefe, Susan Frame, and myself were in our little group. And one of the things that we talked about is that we can't wait for the people above to help us with these elections. It really has to start at the local level. And we found that we were very successful when our boots were on the ground at the local level, the city council, school board, and then moving on up.
Mhm. Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, you've heard us say it here a zillion times. We find it amazing that we keep paying these really high-paid consultants to give us really bad messaging advice. Because if it was any good, we'd be doing a lot better than pretty much breaking even with the party that's off the rails. And so and all of us, I think, have had a similar experience. I remember when John Kerry was running, and the Kerry people came in to the campaign offices and took over. Here's what everybody's going to do. And candidates are going, wait a minute, I got my race to run. And from that day forward, we just learned it. They come in, we go, hi, well, great, here's a desk, that's great. And okay, you're all going to do this. We go, and then all of the campaigns had their plans, and they were ready to do what they were going to do, and made sure that they got their things accomplished. We're going to, and I think that's especially in messaging that we do. The training we've been doing here, and Antonia does, and Hobie does, and others is all grassroots based. This whole change that people are starting to think about messaging in terms of framing, George Lakoff's stuff. This is happening now. It's happening more and more, and it's and you've all been in it for a while. This is a good thing. It's a good thing.
Tom.
Yeah, thanks. One of the things that we talked about was to get some of the ugliness out of the advertising is to maybe start getting more ranked choice voting going, because I think you'd eliminate the issues of the negativity, because you might want that second vote, and if you're being negative on a candidate, you might not get it. You push them over the edge and say, I'm not voting for you because you are being so negative. And to to piggyback on what George said, I watched an interview with PBS NewsHour with Nancy Pelosi, and that's exactly what she said. Campaigns are local. And you need to, and each candidate knows exactly what the issues are in their district.
Yeah. Wasn't that Tip O'Neill? All politics is local.
Yeah, but Nancy Pelosi said it more recently.
Yeah.
True.
She's awesome. She's like a transformer, some kind of major.
Joshua.
Yeah. Hi there. I didn't really get a chance to talk about this in the group, but my experience was maybe kind of different from what everybody else is talking about. I volunteered a lot for a candidate in Pennsylvania who won, and somewhat for a candidate in New Jersey who lost. I would say there was a big difference. The candidate who won, her name was Susan Wild. She's a two-term incumbent. And they had a DCCC organizer on the ground over a year ago. And she started holding calls with allies around the district and things like that a good year ago, and started planning things. They started doing deep canvassing, at least they called it that. They called it deep canvassing. At any rate, a lot of canvassing first to friendly people. And they really, and I was able to give her a bunch of feedback about what had been working for her and what hadn't been working for her. And as I say, she won narrowly her third term. There was a candidate in Pennsylvania, in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, named Ashley Ehas, who I tried to volunteer for, and it was impossible. There was no sign up on her website. There were emails that went out. Oh, hey, anybody who can volunteer, please let me know. And then when I tried to volunteer, when I tried to email them, it said, oh, out of office for the next week.
Oh,
And things like that, like totally unresponsive. And then finally, I found my experience with Tom Malinowski in New Jersey, who just lost, really interesting, in that he had a new part added to his district, and his district became more difficult. And I volunteered there with a friend of mine who lives there in Rahway, New Jersey. And we went around, and it was remarkable to me how nobody had been contacted. There were a few signs. This is pretty much a 70% Democratic city. There were a few signs for the Republican, no signs for Malinowski.
Wow.
People we were contacting had never been contacted before. I thought, oh, well, I'll see what the history is of contacting this person. No, nothing. And the one more thing I realized, because my friend actually is a resident and voter in Rahway, is that their big races were municipal races that were decided in the Democratic primary. And none of the Democrats running for office had to run in the general election. So they actually made no effort, honestly. It was remarkable. Like, oh, well, we know the Democratic mayor is going to win, so why try? And he lost narrowly. And I just think there must have been so much missed opportunity involved in that. And his opponent, who's now going to be a congressman, is the son, the kind of no good Nick son of the former governor who everybody liked, Tom Kean. This is Tom Kean Jr. And he's got nothing going for him but his name. And it just demoralizes me. But I just feel like things are being left on the table because people are not getting organized and making the effort. That's what I have to say.
Right. And, I just know from watching one of our local candidates here for mayor in Brooklyn Park. And I know we're just a suburb, but we are the 6th largest city in Minnesota. And he works hard, not just for himself. He worked for every single other Democrat on the ballot. And his leadership, brought people in. He had a huge organization that he developed, and they went out and handed out the sample ballots and everything, because it's not just about him. It's about, he knows it's about all the other candidates. So that's the a takeaway I took from him and watching him in action. as a leader candidate like that. And so, yeah, I could see now where that missed opportunity is if your candidate just doesn't have it.
And I also think, Lisa, some of these districts that are running with, they're running unopposed, like in the red districts, there's nobody opposing them. I mean, that's just insane. It's like somebody should step up, even if you're gonna get slaughtered. You gotta put somebody in there so that the people that, we can just get the name going and there are Democrats out in the rural areas.
Right.
I can say about that.
Oh, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I can say about that. One thing that I observed in 2020 was a friend of mine who is from rural Pennsylvania, moved to New York City and was a friend of mine here in the New York area, moved back to Pennsylvania in 2020 to District 12. It's a huge rural area, made a showing there and increased Democratic vote from whatever, like 20% to 35% or something. And that may have been what gave Biden the victory in 2020, maybe.
Yeah.
Because he showed up and made the effort.
Yes.
I have a question. Does anybody know anything about Michigan? Because what I heard was that in a kind of unintended accident of the redistricting process, I heard that they redistricted according to kind of keeping neighborhoods together, but it turned out that almost all of the districts were competitive, which is not even normally how a redistricting turns out. Usually there's a bunch of safe seats on either side and then some number, but supposedly they had like a huge number of competitive districts, which I think may have contributed to, like, if they had people win or lose, if they were out fighting every district, I mean, they swept the state and Gretchen Whitmer won by like 14 points or something. And I just have to wonder if the fact that they were fighting in every district, if that made a huge difference to that. Like, I'd really be interested in knowing, would it make sense to argue that, like, let's get out and fight let's go out and campaign in every district, whether we have it in the bag, whether we don't have a chance, like, let's just do that.
Like the 50 state strategy, but for your state.
Yep.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
We had an independent commission for redistricting too, I believe.
Right. I think I'm the Michigan guy here.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So what happened?
And yeah, so right in 2018, we have in Michigan, we have the ability to amend the Constitution without permission from the state legislature or the governor or anybody. It's just a people's vote, done. So in 2018, we passed an amendment to replace gerrymandering, replace redistricting by legislature with an independent commission, which to be on the commission, you could not have been running for office in the last 10 years or something.
Oh, nice.
So no politicians. And yes, it produced exactly that result that Antonio was talking about. Essentially, because the Republicans have been in charge of the legislature for 40 years.
Oh my God.
So gerrymandering was just, everything. But once the gerrymandering went away, nearly every district, well, certainly across the state, the districts all became very competitive. And the result is that it's a blue state by one seat in one house and two seats in the other.
Wow.
So it's right on the edge. But we started that 4 years ago when we made that change. We also opened up voting to use same-day registration and absentee ballot without a reason. And in that same election, 2018, we elected Gretchen Whitmer and Dana Nessel and Jocelyn Benson and took the top 3 seats. So 2018 is kind of a historic, as you look back, right? There's no immediate benefit in 2018, but we harvested, we reaped the benefits in 2022. We also passed 3 more constitutional amendments this year. one of which is reproductive freedom. That's in the Constitution. Another one is more voting protections. And then the third one had to do with term limits. But, and yes, and Michigan, it's in the note in the chat. Yeah, Michigan also has a 1-seat majority on the state Supreme Court.
Wow.
And you also have Valerie McMorrow.
And we got Mallory.
Who, if
Yeah.
you haven't seen that video, look up Valerie McMorrow. She just, not Valerie, what did I say?
Mallory.
Mallory. McMorrow. Said it right the first time. It's a great video. She just, she just dishes it right back to some Republican. But I remember being in Michigan in 2017. We did some training in Royal Oak and in that area, City 11. And Michigan is a state to watch for organizing. I'm absolutely totally impressed. After we left there, the Liberal Leadership League formed. They do the same kind of training that we do. And we trained out there. And one thing I remember was people were wearing these really nifty little pins. And I thought it was an art project. There are all these different shapes. Everybody in the room had these pins with different shapes on them. And I'm going, boy, what is this, an art project? They go, no, those are our legislative districts. It's like, this is the gerrymandering that's been going on. It's, and they look like salamanders and like, I say the gerrymandering, but it was crazy. But Michigan has done some wonderful things there, as Brian brought out. I didn't know all that. That's even more on top of a very organized state that does very well. It has very good leadership and really, really good local organizations that work really hard and are very innovative. So keep an eye on Brian over there. He'll make sure we whip us all into shape.
By the way, I would love if anybody has any stories of like cute, fun, quirky, interesting things people do, send them to me. I want to know, because I want to share those with other people. So anything, no matter how small, I want to hear about it. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Brian.
I was just going to say on those constitutional amendments, all of those came from grassroots. That was not the Democratic Party organizing and putting this in. I think ACLU drove one of them, but it was essentially the gerrymandering, the redistricting one in particular, literally came from somebody the day after the 2016 election, sitting down on her computer and going really frustrated, saying, I've got to do something. I think redistricting needs to be fixed on Facebook. She put a Facebook post, and within a couple of months, we had 10,000 volunteers out there getting signatures to move this thing.
Awesome. So I'm going to get, we've got a couple people with their hands raised. So Greg, you've had your hand raised for a long time, and then Catherine.
Thanks. So I think that one way we spread is democratic strength is, from centers of power outward. And right now, I've talked about the Abigail Spanberger, and we've got the I-95 corridor that goes from Northern Virginia down to Richmond. And so the question is there a relationship between the strength of a local Democratic committee and the quality of the candidates in that area?
A good question.
Because I don't know if it's chicken and egg or whatever that is, but if we up here in Northern Virginia start sending a little bit of money down to Stafford County Democrats to help them fund sample ballots, then they got sample ballots, and of course it's up to them to sort of get the volunteers to pass them out on election day. And if candidates see, well, okay, look, we got an organization, maybe we can get some wins down there. So anyway.
No, I think that's a really important question. I know here in Minnesota, we were wrestling with the fact that we've all seen this, where there are candidates and some of them get it and some of them don't.
Got it.
And some of them don't really do any work or aren't prepared for the rigors of campaigning. And then they're very upset and they're looking to put blame places and all this. So we said, let's let's turn that around. It actually came out of a nominations committee idea, which is, well, maybe we should tell people what we're looking for. And so we turned it into candidate training. And the first 2 candidates I trained, one of them said, this is really good information. She wrote everything down. She had everything going. She ran a really great campaign, her first time campaign. She ran for state senate. She didn't make it. She was up against somebody who'd been around a lot longer, but a great campaign, just did everything. The other person said, really, that's what I'm supposed to be doing? This is too much work. I'm not going to run. So I guess I count that as a win. I mean, if someone doesn't really want to do the work, that's great. Although what Ginny said was it's good to have people running in these races. It's hard to get people to run. And you even mentioned, a sacrifice. That's kind of what the word for it is sacrificial lamb is kind of the technical term for the folks who are going to run and we know they're not going to win. But, I won't take it away from candidates that they don't. In a district, they know they're going to lose because it's a lot of work and a lot of heartbreak. And you have to be, as a candidate, very positive and, I'm going to win, because why would your volunteers work for you if you didn't think you were going to win, even though you're not gonna, and it's tough. But anyway.
All right, so Catherine.
Okay, I will. Hi, I just want to offer a couple things that our group put together on the questions. First off, the question is, how do you feel? And mostly it was a lot of hopeful. And one person said he was going to talk about the glass half full, and that got added to change the content so it's full of sparkling water instead of plain water. That's a little attitudinal change. And then down to, what do you think we should go next? Well, part of that was dealing with the gaslighters who are out there in the general public and trying to affect the general public. I don't know how to do that, but people like Steve Bannon, people like the Murdoch Company news, entertainment people. One suggestion is, it's in the chat, but put together a lot to ask the people in your district, wherever you are, what your organizing unit is, put together their stories, just as Antonia asked, and maybe make it as much as a sheet of paper, but their story, don't be too specific, and then collate it, put it together. Yep, and that will do it soon while people are still thinking that. And you might be able to glean some good stuff out of that. That's what we're hoping to do. And then another was the human connection. Zoom is great for meetings, but man, the human connection. And if that takes finding something that works as a community center and try to do some kind of face-to-face that maybe isn't necessarily political, but getting people together. And those are the things our group talked about.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And I saw some of that too in the chat. So thank you for putting it in the chat too. Peter and or Patty.
I had it. Well, I just wanted to say, as I shared in our small group, I just did not have the emotional energy to do a lot of campaigning this cycle, mostly because of redistricting. But one thing that I thought about and ended up doing was when the candidates started to declare all over the country, and there were ones I thought were particularly good, like Maxwell Frost. I was a strong supporter of him, but I thought, I'm going to give to these guys early on so they can have the money to build a campaign. So I just sprinkled money around to various different campaigns. And I felt better about that because, a lot of the people that I was supporting that way, it really came through. And so for me, that was gratifying. But another group that came, I don't know how they got a hold of me, but this young people's group called the Voters of Tomorrow. And I've talked to a couple people about this. But it's a group of like high school kids and college kids. And they've got this organization in many states. They don't have one in Minnesota, but what they do is they say, if you give us some money, we'll do the work. So they were out there door knocking, they were out there driving people to the polls, they were doing all the stuff that we really want our young people to be doing. And they've got their own organization going. And it's, to me, it's like, we sit around and say, where are all the young people? But they've started their own way of doing things. And so to me, it was very gratifying to be able to support that group, because we know now what an effect all the young voters had on this election. And so, what I'm hoping to do now is to contact them and say, hey, would you be interested in starting a group in Minnesota? Because I think if we older people can give them money, and they will then be energized to get out and do the work, because they don't have the money for gas, or they are students, or they, they can't give up their part-time job because they need the rent money, but they have some time that they could give to doing things. And I think we don't often appreciate that in our young people, how busy they are. And so anyway, it's just a thought for people. I don't know if other people have been in contact with them or not, but or if you know anything about them, I'd love to hear.
Thank you. Federico.
Oh, no, just no, I just put it in the chat. I mean, I'm just wondering about what impact folks feel Pennsylvania's John Fetterman, had or may have. And so here, I like what Susie said, that he'll be inspirational to many. I don't know. I wonder if anyone else has a thought. The folks from Pod Save America thought that he ran a very good campaign, even despite the stroke and everything.
Anybody have thoughts on Fetterman, especially if you live out that way?
Yeah, Josh, you were in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, in fact, my friends in Pennsylvania 2 years ago were saying, hey, I think Fetterman's going to run. Hey, Fetterman. They knew him. They believed in him. They told me he's never worn a suit in his entire life, which is not quite true. He does for required occasions. But I think there was a book a couple of years ago called The Cash Ceiling, which was about who gets to run for office, not a bartender like AOC, not a blue collar worker. The people who get to run for office are the people who can raise $1,000 from a lot of friends, like lawyers. Lawyers are perfectly positioned to run for office. Regular people are not. And John Fetterman's a little bit special case, but he, by the look test, he is a regular blue collar guy, right? And Democrats can't get those people to run necessarily because the impediments are just too high. Like there's no pipeline for people like that to run for office. And maybe there needs to be some kind of pipeline, like maybe something that like the bed is made and all they have to do is lie in it,
I've got a bunch of notes from a friend who was really busy canvassing in the Philly area. And I can't just copy and paste them into the chat. I've tried a bunch of times. If you want to real quick summarize them. She said she made it her mission to explain to everyone she talked to about the January 6th problems. And she said they were not interested. They were unmoved. In speaking with them, she realized they are much less aware about issues than any of us. And all the different voices they hear are equivalent. They do not know who to believe about election integrity. This is why they are swing voters. They feel the recent round of inflation plummeted them from middle class to penury. They are more worried about food and shelter than about the future of democracy, which seems like a luxury they cannot afford right now. They want to vote for whoever screams the loudest about tearing down the lousy system that catapulted them from middle class to poor. The most effective arguments with that crowd were about abortion access. Also reminding people Democrats have a better record than Republicans on confronting large corporate interests. I realized when I made the arguments, it made people think. In contrast, the whole democracy argument was white noise. I do not understand them, but in sales for 20 years, I recognized what worked and I sold to them. So
Catherine, could you send that to us in an email?
I will. Yes.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
And then I know Diane wanted to say something. Yeah, go ahead quick. And then I want to bring it back to one issue that we didn't even talk about.
I was just going to make a comment about the appearance of Fetterman. And I think that, you know, it lent this sense of authenticity to him and what his campaign was about and who he was appealing to. It reminded me a little bit of Jesse Ventura when he ran. And he didn't try to, you know, dress up in a suit and pretend he was somebody and talk, you know, use a vernacular that wasn't his. And so I think, you know, to me, the most important thing you could do is kind of be yourself and be authentic, right? And people like that and they appreciate that. And I think sometimes they can see through when you're trying to be somebody you're really not. So.
He was actually our mayor before he was our senator. What I do want to bring up is the
governor.
Or our governor. One issue that should have been very big and wasn't was climate. And I want to bring this up to bring Hobie in on that. But that, you know, climate is like, you know, if we don't fix that, you know, fascists or not, we're all going to be choking to death here. What do you think on that, Hobie? What did you?
Well, you're right. It wasn't in the top 3. It wasn't in the top 5 or 6 even. But I want to respond to and connect it with something that Catherine just said. You were talking about the arguments and you know, what issues were important. And to me, you know, tied back to Fetterman, a friend of mine was in the advertising business, and he taught me a long time ago that you cannot persuade people. You can only attract people. And we tend to want to persuade people with arguments and pick the right arguments and think that we're going to convince somebody of something. And when we talk about authenticity, we are talking about attracting somebody based on honesty and who they are, whether we agree with them or not. And you build trust that way. And so in the, you know, why climate is in there or not, I think partly the climate issue, quote unquote, was uncovered by scientists. And as liberals, we think that facts and reasons will convince people. And I get 100 emails a day that say we're all going to die, and I can prove to you that we are. And I don't give a rat's ass whether that's true or not. What I want to know is how does somebody feel? Tell me their story about it. Tell me how they were affected, how their child has asthma because of the pollution. And that is more impactful. And when we look for candidates, I think we got to look for candidates that know how to tell stories and are authentic and don't try and convince people. And I think that was well, anyway, enough said. That's kind of where climate is in that. And that's my campaign to kind of break my climate activist friends of the habit of trying to prove that climate change is real.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hobie. Connie, do you have your hand up?
Thank you. On the subject of messaging and the failure of democracy to move people. So the communication expert that I follow, that I trust the most, said at the outset of the season, the way to reach people is through values, and the most widely accepted value in this country is freedom. So you frame everything through freedom. So when you talk and she has messaging for every single major issue, and it's and how to tie it to freedom. And she said, even when you talk about abortion, you talk about it, the freedom to make your own decisions, your own healthcare decisions. And and Josh, so I've been using that. It gives me a lot of confidence. And when I was canvassing for Kim Schreier in CD 08 in Washington, I talked to a young man, who took over the conversation immediately when, he said, I am voting for Kim Schreier because I'm worried about, I'm a gay man and I'm worried about my freedom to be married. That's the, Republicans threaten that freedom. And I'm voting Democrats down the line because I'm worried about a whole list of freedoms that Republicans are threatening. And I thought, oh my gosh, Anat must have done personal outreach to him or something, or one of her, or someone who's spreading her message reached this man. And that made that conversation so easy. And that Anat says, we at the base have to start singing that song to everyone around us until it dominates. And about climate, she attacked for climate, and I understand that was a low priority this time, but you can bring that in by saying our freedom to breathe clean air and to have clean water. So I never did bring that up, but everything I attached everything on all the work I did, I spoke through a freedom frame. And I wish everyone would take advantage of that. And I want to mention that Josh Shapiro, who won the governorship in Pennsylvania, he is all with that. So he understands her he uses her, he understands her framing, her messaging, and he has done some brilliant work with that. And I wish I could give you a link to one of his speeches that's available on video that was on his Twitter page for a while, that exemplifies this. And it is so moving. What he did with that is so moving. And I think he's going places because he gets this. Thanks.
Thank you. Ginny. Oh, you're on mute, Ginny.
Sorry about that. When Hobie was talking about, you have to, the whole climate thing. There was Gretchen Piper was running a few years ago out in our district as a Democrat, but she lost, unfortunately. But she was going to some guy's house, and I might have said this on another meeting, and I apologize if you've heard it before, but it really struck I thought it was interesting. But this guy had a big Trump sign in his lawn, but he had a fishing boat in his driveway, and she thought, oh, okay, well, I'll go talk to him. And she just was talking about, like on the keeping the waters in Minnesota clean and blah, blah, blah. And she said, oh, I see you have a fishing boat. And he said, yeah. And anyway, they kind of got on the topic of fishing and that a lot of Minnesota's lakes are impaired right now. They're not very clean like they used to be. And so, and it was a bit of commonality that, here was a big Trump guy, but, really if she was connecting with him with his passion of fishing and how the climate will adversely affect his fishing and the economics of the state of, and the sportsmen and all that sort of thing. So anyway, it's just kind of, she was meeting him where he was. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way to go.
And just before we get to you, I just want to bring up that I've put in the chat a link to Hobie's website and Antonia's Substack, both really excellent sources of well-framed messages and such. I think Antonia's Substack is the very best advice you are going to find anywhere. I see heads nodding on framing and messaging. There's just nothing better right now. And Hobie is absolute genius at framing messages about climate and everything else too. But his special expertise is there in environmental things. And so before we go, I just want everybody to know that we'll also send an email to follow up. If all of you have, we've talked about a lot of things. I tried to write them down. If you've had things that you want people to take a look at, like I think Josh mentioned the cash ceiling. Send us a link or something to that information. And then also Antoni was looking for all sorts of stories from you, which I can only imagine are going to end up in one of her Substacks. So, so you want to do that. But anyway, just
so I'm
wanted to
gonna,
mention
okay,
that.
we really kind of need to start wrapping this up. So we're gonna go with Josh and then Federico and then Sue, and then that's it. And then we'll give George, Antoni, and Hobie an opportunity just to say a few words before we sign off tonight. So, Josh, you went away. Are you still? Did you still want to say something?
Here.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah, I have something to add on the subject of climate change, and Antonio knows because I'm friends with Antonio and we've talked about these things 100 times. One thing I've done in the last 3 elections is send out a newsletter to House campaigns across the country in swing districts about voter psychology and how it can help them. And one of the points that I made in my newsletter is Republicans talk about everything in terms of loss. We have a thing called loss aversion, right? We hate losing. We hate losing what we've got. Republicans talk about everything. Guns, they're going to take away your guns. They're going to take away what am I thinking of?
The right to vote. Your freedom to control
your hamburgers.
Your hamburgers, exactly.
Jobs.
And in fact, something Trump always said is, if we don't have a wall at the border, we don't have a country. Or if we don't do XYZ, you're going to lose your country. Like everything is lost. Everything is framed in terms of loss. And Democrats don't do that. Democrats think that's not a positive message. We need a positive message about what we're going to do. Climate change is a huge opportunity to frame things in terms of loss. Like, what are we going to lose? We're going to lose South Florida, Louisiana, and our naval bases, right? The Navy's already planning for this. We're going to lose our water. If you're in the Southwest, you're losing your water. If we don't do something, we have all these things to lose. And Democrats don't campaign on like protecting us from loss, stopping us from losing things that we have, stopping us from losing our way of life because climate change is wrecking it. And meanwhile, our picture of climate change, of our response to climate change is all things we're going to lose. They're going to take away my car and, as you say, hamburgers and my air conditioning and everything else. So Democrats have never figured out how to frame things in terms of, if we don't do this, we're going to lose our way of life, which is, it's like a Republican message all the way, and it's never a Democratic message.
Except for the 5 zillion donation emails I get from candidates, which I call Chicken Little emails.
God, we're losing.
Yeah.
Federico.
Oh, no, just a minor thing. But when we talk about the other side, so I see, Anat Shanker-Ossorio's using Trump Republicans, and then I know someone else uses MAGA Republicans, but I just wonder. I mean, of course, the guy is toxic, but he's got, he's got a kind of like short life, shelf life, right? I mean, like he's going away. I mean, at some point, So I wonder if if it's better just to say MAGA Republicans or Republican politicians. I don't know. What do Antonia think?
I say MAGA.
I just say the opposition. Like, I don't even. I mean, you read my stuff. I try to say we should never be taught. We should almost never ever be talking about them. So, and I have the same thing in my newsletter. I always need to refer to them in some way, but a lot of the times I just default to like the opposition or you know, the other guys or something. I don't even name them. Because also you don't want to alienate some kind of, you know, Romney Republican who's like, why are they saying bad things about Republicans? You know, like, you want to appeal to those people too. So you just have to be careful not to say things that are, you just be careful not to rope in the swing voters when you're, whatever it is that you're using.
Sue.
Thanks, Antonia. Sue.
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank Antonia. A couple months ago, you were on Connections Lab and we were talking about reproductive rights. And I ended up I created an event, had some people here, and we raised about $800 for our justice in Minnesota here. And, but what I gave everybody, you know, George was talking about your Substack. I gave everybody all the information you laid out about how to talk about constitutional amendments when you're talking about reproductive freedom. And I encourage people to speak in those terms and to write letters to the editor. I wrote a letter to the editor and had it printed in our local paper, you know, following the constitutional amendments, and it went really well. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Send me copies if you can. I would love to see them.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everybody. So now I'm going to let Antonia, Hobie, and George just say a few last words to close this out for the evening. This has been really wonderful. So good to talk to everybody. I think everybody got a chance to speak and you know, just to have this nice conversation. So I don't know which one of you three wants to go first.
Antonia, why don't you pick it up?
Okay. Yeah, like this, you know, it's been so hard since this election trying to figure out exactly what I feel, because I feel a million things at once. Like there's so many things that are positive, I'm happy about, so many things that I'm upset about. But I think it just going forward, I mean, just to sort of recap a lot of what I'm hearing and what I've been thinking about is like what Hobie said about you can only attract people. Like we need to make being a Democrat seem like the coolest thing in the world and just be like, hey, we are having a blast. We're happy. We're awesome. We're like good, loving people in a way that makes people want to join us, you know, and whether it's having fun and being nice and like all of these things, like, you know, we want to draw people into that. And I think the candidates and the campaigns the same way. Like we want to paint a picture of, you know, hey, if you vote for Democrats, you're going to be living in a world where we just like cooperate and things get done and it's not going to suck, you know, and like, you know, attracting people with that, that positive image, because I feel like the candidates that I'm seeing out there that are doing a good job are the ones that are really winning, are the ones that are both doing two things. One is not being like delusional or pretending that bad things aren't happening, but doing the old FDR thing. Like, yeah, I know things are tough and, you know, but if we do this, we can get it done. And like, I know Josh was talking about like what we're going to lose. It's like, yeah, we need to talk about what we're going to lose, but we also have to give people that sense of agency that allows them, that says like, you're going to lose this, but if you vote for Democrats and do X, Y, and Z, we will be okay. You know, you have to make the path to getting to the better place run through getting more Democrats elected. You know, so you know, there was so much negative, like in this race, we were running against like horror show people. So there was really no way to get away from having to say, look at my opponent is actually a danger to society. But what I would really love to see going forward is less focus on them and what they're doing and more like a concentrated focus from all of us on just saying, hey, we have a vision for a better future and you have a place in that future that's a good place and we can help you see that. And we want you to come along with us into making that future and just make this whole experience more positive and talk about that, like like safety monger and like, you know, like we don't, like they're fear mongering. They're making people feel scared. They're making people retrench. They're making people angry. We need to just be the opposite of all of that. And make like, you know, when you're drowning and we're providing you a safe, dry, you know, place to be with good food, like you're going to want to come with us. So yeah, and I think that the way to get that through to people is on the personal level, like getting out there in person. I think the candidates that went out into the community, I mean, like Greg mentioned Abigail Spanberger, if you follow her Facebook feed every single day, she's at some union hall, she's at some factory, she's at some center. She's like, I've never seen anybody relentlessly out there meeting. Like I met her back in 2017, and like even before she declared her candidacy, I think she'd had 1,000 house parties. Like,
wow.
Like Josh Shapiro had people out in the rural areas well over a year before the election, just meeting with people, getting people together, like the positivity and the community. You put that together with people's need for safety, for company, for community. That's the motive, I think, that gets people where we want them to be. And so, and it's also the thing that would make this experience much happier for a lot of us. And so kind of that's where I'm thinking about things. Like I want to see a politics where we're out there at picnics and parties and we've got cool t-shirts and lots of lawn signs, and you know, we're helping people feel positive about where we could go. Like that's what I would really love to see moving forward. And I would like to see the 2024 election be more that than a rerun of this, our opponents are the devil and everything's going to go to hell. You know, like I really want to push us in that other direction.
Thanks, Antonia. Hobie?
Boy, we could go on all night, couldn't we? I just want to say thank you for everybody here and all the work that we did. This is great. You're great. And, you know, I appreciate the way we learn from each other. This will help us more than anything, I think. And so I'll say good night. Good job.
Thanks, Hobie. George, take it away.
I'll be real quick here too. We had people from, looks like 7 or 8 states, which I think is great. We are learning from each other and seeing the differences that there are in places. And that's, I think, has been a nice feature of the webinars that we've done. And then also just to point out that there are a lot more resources available for people who want to learn framing and messaging from the scientific side of things. And the resources are different in what they provide. And I think what we've strived to provide here, I know Antonia and Hobie have also, is to make sure that all of you who are, you know, it's obvious, the people who have been around a while, who have experience, and the activists and leaders who are going to be here. We are really trying to make sure that you have the training in the science behind it and in the aspects of it. And that's all also tied back to on the ground, at the door, organizing, and we've all had experience with that too. So we offer something a little bit different than, say, what you might be seeing from the movement briefings, which have a place also. But we really think we need to teach people to fish, and that's what we're doing. And so anyway, thank you all. This is always so much fun, and there's so many great, I mean, you know, all these people who think that they're the most smartest people in the world, they are the elite of the Democratic Party, and what they say makes sense. I see a whole lot of really smart people here who I think have it a little more on the ball than the experts. So anyway, thank you, everyone. Looking forward to, we'll do our next webinar in January at some point, and there are other things afoot, so we'll see what happens.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
George. Good
Bye.
night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
connectionslab.org